lumbering down shadowy metallic passageways, your eyes darting back and forth as paranoia makes you think every shadow and new object that emerges from the darkness is a potential threat, managing your own sanity while your character barely manages his, and doing your best to survive wave after wave of hellish, unspeakable atrocities known as necromorphs. These things and many more are what you can expect to be doing throughout most of your time with Dead Space. As most of the best horror games do, Dead Space brought together several elements of other horror classics together and threw in a dash of its own secret sauce to make the unmitigated triumph it is known as today. Even now, more than 10 years after its launch, Dead Space is regarded as one of survival horror's biggest standout achievements that few games have matched since. Some would even say its two sequels, despite how effectively they pushed the envelope on a technical level, still didn't compare to the magic that the original had conjured. When you break it down into its basic ingredients, Dead Space might not seem too impressive. It's got an over-the-shoulder gameplay style that had been used many years prior, inventory management systems that were even older ideas, and an Aliens-inspired look that we had already seen in games like Doom 3. So what makes this particular combination of those elements so special? As you'll notice about all games, books, movies, or TV shows that breach the membrane of mediocrity, there's just a special tone to Dead Space that defies classification. Sure, the game fits snugly into the survival horror genre and doesn't reinvent the wheel in terms of what type of game it is, but the way everything feels once it's put together is hard to describe. Somewhere between dread and complete hopelessness is where you'll find games like Dead Space. First off, as any great survival horror game will do, Dead Space establishes an alarming sense of isolation. Not just by having the main character lost at sea or taking a wrong turn in Appalachia either. Isaac Clarke quickly finds himself trapped on a mining starship in the middle of deep space, with almost nobody around who isn't dead and mutilated or in as desperate a situation as he is. That's about as isolated as you can get, and unlike most horror settings, the character can't be saved simply by running away, finding a car, or calling the cops. This desperate situation isn't wasted either, as Dead Space uses its desolate setting to its advantage in multiple ways to constantly remind you that even if Isaac survives the next encounter, he's still royally screwed. Not to be outdone by the desperation of the setting, the character himself is woefully underprepared and unqualified for the situation. Isaac isn't some military commando sent to the Ishimura to wipe out the ghastly monsters that await him, and he doesn't have the option of nuking anything from orbit. He's an engineer, sent to the planet-cracking mining ship to fix some routine issues that he's probably fixed many times before. Unfortunately for him, he ends up dropped into one of the most desperate and hostile environments the human mind can comprehend. The ship's crew has been all but slaughtered by a mysterious alien species, and the few survivors Isaac still has from his crew are completely scattered and can only communicate in short bursts of video conference broadcasts with lower quality than a 2006 YouTube video. Nevertheless, Isaac is tasked with performing the lion's share of what's needed to get the ship up and running well enough to preserve themselves for some sort of rescue attempt. The odds are not in his favor, but despite having zero combat training, Isaac uses the available mining and demolition equipment as makeshift weapons to defend himself throughout the journey. This is one of Dead Space's most genius ideas, where many great horror games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil eventually lose some of their uneasiness with the comfort that discovering shotguns and hunting rifles can provide. Dead Space gives you no such relief. Saws, plasma cutters, and shockwaves do functionally fill similar roles to conventional weapons, but the context around them still makes them feel like they aren't ideal solutions, and thus the game does a better job at maintaining that sense of vulnerability for the main character throughout the game. Every encounter with a necromorph feels like it could be your last, regardless of how well you handle the weapons or how much ammo you have. Speaking of the combat, as the developer's name suggests, it's nothing short of visceral. As the true form of a necromorph is essentially shapeless, the types you will encounter are varied and can require a variety of different strategies to take down efficiently. One thing they mostly do have in common though is their need to be dismembered to be effectively eliminated. For a necromorph, pain or fear for its own life is not an issue. They will pursue their target up to and until being completely disarmed. pun intended. While this might be a somewhat overt excuse to make the game gorier, it also serves as an excellent reason to force the player to get up close to enemies and focus on hacking away at them until the job is done, as opposed to taking body shots at them from across the room like most horror action games will let you get away with. By the end of each battle, you didn't just kill an enemy, you methodically chopped one up, or if you're lucky and came across some explosives, blew it to smithereens. The game doesn't ever give you quite enough ammo to feel secure though, so if you are even the least bit wasteful with it, you'll find yourself bludgeoning and stomping enemies to death in close quarters from time to time, which is also handled pretty well as a mechanic, all things considered. Of the more subtle tweaks that Dead Space makes to the survival horror formula is the user interface. Gone are the immersion-killing health meters, ammo counters, objective markers, and inventory screens of the horror games of that era, at least on the screen. Dead Space still displays all of that info to you, it's just cleverly built into the world. Isaac's health and stasis meters are physically on his suit. Your ammo is displayed on a hologram screen projected from the weapon in use, and the path to your next objective is illustrated by a navigation laser that Isaac willingly projects on the floor. These things neatly tell you what you need to know while making just enough sense contextually to never quite break the fourth wall. While Dead Space is certainly not the first game to tinker with these sorts of information display methods, it certainly is arguably the best example of nailing all of them at once. On top of the finely tuned setting, the well-planned out story, and outrageously immersive gameplay is the presentation itself. Needless to say, the game nails this just as hard as it does everything else, if not even more so. The dark grays and browns of nearly every surface, with sprinkles of neon lights here and there, coalesce into a visual tone that, while almost certainly inspired by Aliens, ends up feeling very much like its own thing by the end. Darkness is as much a part of the color scheme as anything, and the visual effects team over at Visceral really had a good time playing with it by mixing in some nice real-time strobing effects with the occasional malfunctioning light fixture. The visual style is also compounded by the level layouts that force Isaac into varying degrees of claustrophobia as the hallways expand and contract into different sizes, allowing for just enough exploration to not feel too linear, but never enough to feel any sort of relief that can come from too much freedom. Few games can cobble together so many less than new ideas, yet still feel as fresh and timeless as Dead Space. Even now in 2020, the 12-year-old game looks fantastic and will continue to age well due to its unwavering devotion to its own style. While most fans still enjoy its sequels for good reason, they admit that the original is the classic that kept Isaac quiet enough to not lose focus on the gameplay, but just enough of a story going to motivate you to plow through the next encounter. Dead Space has it all: a timelessly engrossing visual style, a terrifying setting, and solid gameplay that forces you to get way too personal with the appalling horde that awaits you. It never lets up, yet it's never too much. Every dreadful moment is earned, and every advancement strikes you with just enough hope to keep going, but never enough to feel confident about what lies ahead. Even if it's not your cup of tea, you have to admit, it's one hell of a game. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.